What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here. Get out your tinfoil hats. It's time to speculate about Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So we received a bunch of information from a variety of articles, Amazon listings, leaks, and D&D live interviews, and I thought it would be fun to sit down and tell you what I think is going to appear in that book, and then maybe speculate about some stuff that we'd want to see, or I would want to see. So before we dive into that, though, I wanted to talk to you about the sponsor for today's video, our returning sponsor, our good friends over at Describe. So if you've been here with the channel, you've heard me talk about Describe before, but if you haven't, it's an online tool to help you add immersive box-style text to your campaign so that you can focus on other aspects of it. You can see they have places, monsters, spells, characters, over 3,000 scenes at the moment, including now they're adding different magic items as well as different situational things like an overheard conversation about an evil plan. Here's a little bit about the pricing. There's a ton of options for free, so I would recommend you go check it out for free, see what you like, and if you do enjoy it, then consider adding a subscription there. You can do an annual for $80. The hero one gets you everything, or you can pay by month, or pick and choose if you only want items or locations or what have you. If you use the link in the description and the coupon code NERDImmersion, you'll get 10% off your first order. We're talking about dragons, so I thought I'd show you there's this volcanic grave here, Draconic volcanic grave, that's fully annotated with tooltips that you can click on to give you a lot of interesting story beats that you can use to further plan it out if you want to use it in your game. And since we're going to be talking about different kinds of dragons, I thought we could talk about this one here, Weakened Prismatic Dragon. I would read you some of the descriptive text, kind of things you'd find on Describe's site. Amidst the ruins, wavering light of every imaginable color splashes across nearby surfaces. The light seems to emanate from a shape at the heart of these ruins, coiled and serpentine. A dragon, or at least something like it. It is invisible to the mortal eye, but perceptible by the strange, prismatic light its gleaming scales give off. The dragon breathes deeply, slowly, and despite its immense size and obvious power, you discern the creature's weakened state. So that's the kind of quality writing that you'll find on Describe's website. So thank you, Describe, for sponsoring this video. So I thought I'd jump over here to this, what we know about Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. This was posted on r/D&D Next, as well as r/D&D Leaks. And I would just touch on a very high level. What are the things we know and what can we extrapolate from there? It's 224 pages. It's divided up into about a third, into thirds. A third is basically monster stat blocks in the bestiary, a third is DM tools, and a third is player options. It's going to be similar in vein to Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's monsters, DM stuff, as well as player options. We're going to have detailed information on 20 different types of dragons. So let's stop there. Now that is probably one of the most interesting pieces. Now I originally speculated that those 20 different types of dragons would be the 5 chromatics, the 5 metallics, the 5 new gem dragons, and 5 other types of dragons. I'm actually increasingly thinking that that might not be the case. Some of you posited that 20 different types of dragons could possibly be the 4 different age categories of wormling, young, adult, and ancient dragons of the 5 gem dragons that are in the book, therefore making 20. And that would suck because that would mean we got shafted and they're just trying to trump up the numbers by saying 20 when really it's just 5 dragons with 4 different age categories. But there were other things announced at D&D Live and mentioned in some articles that are shown here on this website. And that is this Gleamstone or Moonstone Dragon. So it was referenced in, I think, an article, and then again by James Wyatt, the writer of this book, that there are these Feywild dragons. Originally, I heard them referred to as Gleamstone dragons, being dragons from the Feywild. That would be an interesting patron for someone who's a warlock with the Archfey patron background. So that is clearly a Feywild dragon. Now, someone also mentioned a Moonstone Dragon. Now, that might just be a mistake in someone's naming, that they're both actually the same creature. Gleamstone and Moonstone might be the same dragon, or it might be 2 different dragons, perhaps since we're talking about the Feywild, Unseelie and Seelie Court, maybe, I don't know. And then if we scroll down, we talk about the player options here. I will say, as far as speculation goes, it doesn't look like we're going to get Kobold. It looks like it's just going to be the 3 Dragonborn. And there may be tweaks, but that'll be pretty much the same. As far as regarding the new feats, I think speculation-wise, no new feats other than the ones we saw in Unearthed Arcana. The gift of the X-Dragon type, right? Gift of Metallic, Gift of Chromatic, Gift of Gem Dragon. We'll get those 3 feats, perhaps with tweaks to make them more in line power-wise with one another. But I don't believe that we'll be getting anything new, any secret feats we haven't heard of. Same thing with the spells. We received spells in the Draconic Options UA, named after a variety of different kinds of dragons. I think those will arrive, maybe not all of them, or maybe all of them, or maybe with some tweaks and name changes, but I don't think we're going to get any extra spells above and beyond what was included in that. That's unfortunately kind of the world we see ourselves in. We get stuff in Unearthed Arcana, and then whatever we choose, or whatever we say we like or don't like, we get most of that in some instances, or none of it, as we saw with Strixhaven, with the subclasses, but I don't think we're going to get anything outside of what we've already seen. Now, the big area that's an unknown is the magic items. Like, that could be anything. We haven't had dragon-based magic items. We really don't get magic items in Unearthed Arcana, which I do think is kind of an interesting concept. And then lastly, the bestiary is the big thing, right? 5 different types of gem dragons: amethyst, crystal, emerald, sapphire, topaz. Interestingly enough, there are also amber and obsidian gemstone dragons. Those did not make this list. We heard the concept of great worms, which are sort of an ascended style dragon that has contacted itself on other multiverses. We saw the same kind of great worm concept for dragon turtles. So could dragon turtles be one of the 20 different types of dragons? I don't think so, but it's possible. We know Draconians are coming in the book. I'm going to speculate that these are going to be just like a new type of monster, similar to like orcs or drow, or something like that, where basically you're going to have this as a new creature type and you'll get 3 to 5 varieties of them, right? Maybe like a fighter draconian, a cleric draconian, a wizard draconian, rogue draconian, something like that. I don't know what dragon minions were. I didn't hear anything about tiny drakes myself, but I guess we'll get something like that. And maybe new kinds of wyverns. Again, I don't think those consider, when they say 20 different types of dragons, I imagine true dragons, and I'll show you what I mean a little bit later. A Draco-Hydra was mentioned very briefly. An Elder Brain Dragon was also mentioned, which is where you take a Mind Flayer Elder Brain out of its brine pool and supplant it onto the back of a dragon. It puts its tendrils into the dragon and then controls it. Is that one of the 20 dragon types? Again, I don't think so, because an Elder Brain Dragon isn't really a new type of dragon. It's just a dragon with an Elder Brain on its back. And then the dragon-sized Horde Mimic is a mimic, but meant to be the same size as a dragon horde. So I thought we could take a look at some of the stuff from older editions, and apparently we're out of memory here, but that's not important. Well, I guess apparently it is, because all of my books kind of disappeared. So that's great. Well, anyway, I guess we'll have to just go through it here. Oh, everything's shutting down. Wonderful. All right, so what I was going to tell you about is in the Races of the Dragon book from back in 3.5 was a concept they introduced called Draconic Grafts. Now, grafts were nothing new to 3.5 at the time. We had seen them before in the past, and what they are is basically taking a dragon or any kind of creature bit and physically grafting it onto yourself. So I thought, because everybody wants to do something with dragon bits, we know that, right? That's a thing we've seen. Everybody harvests a dragon for their claws, their scales, their skin, whatever the case may be. So what if, rather than having to come up with rules for crafting magic items, the Wizards of the Coast decided to add Draconic Grafting. So what this would be is I would go out and get, like, say, a dragon's claws, and they would be considered a magic item that I would attune to, and then they would graft them to my fingers, similar to the way the tattoos worked in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Rather than you physically getting a tattoo that's irremovable, you get a magic needle that you touch to your skin, gives you the tattoo, and gives you the abilities. That's the best way I could see that working in 5e, because that's just kind of the mentality that we've built. So that's what I think could possibly work, and this would be a way for you to get the concept of using dragon parts to give you different abilities without having to actually change the entire way the game is set. Here I was able to reopen it while I was talking there. So here you can see a variety of different things. For example, here's a frightful crest where someone's taken basically the horns or the crest of a black dragon and grafted it to themselves to give themselves a frightful presence style ability. But I wanted to talk about metabolic fire here as an example. So this is basically you grafting a part of a dragon's Draconis Fundamentum, which is the actual organ inside a dragon that their breath weapon comes from, taking tissue from it and then implanting it in your own chest to give you access to a breath weapon. And I did think it doesn't have any physical appearance other than this really descriptive bit here. However, exposure to the energy within your body darkens your teeth until they become solid black like obsidian. A faint gleam of fire, rime of frost, crackle of electricity, or shimmer of acidic saliva may play around your teeth when you show. And basically, as an action, you could have a breath weapon. And to do it, you would need the Worm Grafter feat, which is a feat that allows you to do dragon grafts, be able to cast the Dragon Breath spell, have 28,000 gold pieces, and 2,240 experience points, and 56 days. You'd also, again, need tissue from a Draconis Fundamentum, and then taken from an unhatched wormling, and it says a donor dragon without a breath weapon, it doesn't work. Because again, in Draconomicon, the original book, we actually got the full anatomy of dragons down to their inner organs. So I think that that could be an interesting way to apply dragon bits to someone, rather than having to come up with a whole crafting section. So I think that that might be something we see in some form. Now, Dragon Magic introduced a whole new class called the Dragonfire Adept, which is a draconic-themed, basically, warlock. So if you're going to make one in 5e, I would look at that as an option. But this also had, obviously, again, feats and things that we're not going to see to change your breath weapons, I don't think. But they had some magic items, and what I wanted to talk about was let's go to Draconic Magic, and we want to talk about Dweomered, dragon scales, which are basically the concept of taking dragon scales and basically shed, whether they're shed or given freely, or taken involuntarily, and turning them into magic items. So these brassy braziers we see right here are basically brass dragon scales. Whether they're small or large, they basically have they're lined with mithril, and they have a strap attached to the other side, and they become bracers. You can activate them, and in this instance, they created a swirling shield of superheated air that basically gave you what was considered a mischance then, which is basically like cover for us now. And if anybody got close and hit you, they would take fire damage. So this would be an interesting concept as well, not allowing you to have to come up with concepts for crafting. You can just take dragon scales as specific magic items. But what they also had in here was different creatures that I thought would be worth looking at. Draconic Beasts. So we know there's going to be aspects of the dragon gods. So we know there's an aspect of Bahamut and an aspect of Tiamat in this book, which shows they were CR 12 or 13, and they were basically a way you can encounter the dragon gods without actually having to fight them. It also brings up something interesting in that these are only 2 of the dragon gods. There are several others that a lot of people who are new to the 5th edition or Dungeons & Dragons don't know, but there's a whole dragon pantheon, so perhaps we'll get aspects of the other dragons. I don't know. And then I just wanted to show off some of the other creatures in here that I think would be interesting. Like a Draken Steed is basically a horse-style dragon. Now, I would love to see these make a comeback as other options for steeds, but they are basically just a dragon-skinned Pegasus, so you could just change the name and make it a Draken Steed. Same thing with the Finkskin, which is essentially like a panther or a lion, but as a dragon version of it. They didn't really have anything unique that made them different, in my opinion, from anything else. But if we jump over to the Draconomicon, for example, we can take a look at all the stuff here. One thing I did like that they had back in this edition, which was feats, spells, and magic items specifically for use for the dragons. Like tail bands that go on the dragon's tail to make it do more damage, or special fangs they could implant in their mouth. Special feats they could take, special even classes that dragons could take to give them new abilities. Again, I would love that, but I don't think we're going to get it. I did just want to show you real quick what I was talking about here. Like, there's the anatomy of a dragon's eye, their skeletal structure, their inner organs, and their musculature. I would love to see this in Fizband so that we can get something. We had stuff similar to this in the front of Volo's Guide to Monsters for the 5 different creatures that were expanded on in that book. I would love that much content just all about dragon in a variety of different ways. So if we talk about the magic items that were here in this book, what I would speculate and love to see, you can see there's a variety of different dragon-based things like using their bones. What I think you gotta have is something either like the armor of dragon shape or the ring of dragon shape. Everybody wants to be a dragon, right? The armor of dragon shape was basically resistant armor that if you were a druid would allow you to wild shape into a dragon. And the ring of dragon shape was basically the same thing. So I think if this is the opportunity, you should do this. You should include some sort of magic item that lets someone change into a dragon. It doesn't need to be a very powerful dragon, just a dragon. That should be in the book, hands down. We also have these different staffs and stuff. I think if you are going to introduce new spells, similar to what you did with Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, where you introduced Dunamancy spells, you introduced a staff of Dunamancy, which gave you access to those spells. I think a staff that does, or a wand or something that gives you access to the spells from this book would also be a good idea. And then again, there's an artifact here, the Draco Mystere. You could do different artifacts. You could add different kinds of, you could do different armor pieces like this, like the Mantle of the Silver Worm or the Crimson Dragonhide Bracers. But I don't know if they're going to just keep adding unique dragon-based items. I don't know. It also depends on what new dragons are introduced, right? If we're going to introduce all these different kinds of dragons, I feel like if you're going to give magic items based on a red dragon, you should give one based on a psionic dragon as well and divide it up. We also had new monsters in here. We had a variety of different Drake-style creatures. But one thing I'd like to see is the Dragonel, right? Which is another horse-style dragon. This one is a little bit different in that it does actually have a unique ability in that it has a Draconic Roar, which gave it a fear effect. And I think this would be cool. I think I'd probably, while the Draken Steed looks cooler, I think this guy might win out over them for the coolness factor and the more unique dragon style. So I think Dragonel would be an interesting creature to add. So again, this could be maybe an option for Fine Steed or something like that, because they can be, it does have that option that they could be trained as a special mount. Again, in 3.5, it would basically be an option to replace a warhorse for a paladin because the mount was a class feature rather than a spell. We have a variety of different elemental drakes here. We heard that there's going to be tiny style drakes. I don't know if they'll expand them out into these other weird ones like the magma drake or the ooze drake. Fang dragons would be a good option, right? This is an interesting dragon that doesn't really have a breath weapon, but its bite can actually sap your constitution, and it has increased damage on its claws and things like that because it's more of a physical-based dragon. That's something we haven't seen, and that's something that people did seem to like, so I would appreciate that showing up. Another one is deep dragons, which are sort of an Underdark style, kind of serpentine snake-like dragon, often associated with drow. Sometimes I've heard Fang dragons referred to as brown dragons, but I've also seen them referred to as separate dragons, even in this book. I've also heard deep dragons referred to as purple dragons. So there's a variety of different options, right? There are expanded metallic and chromatic dragons, right? There's the brown, yellow, gray, purple, and I think even orange dragons. And I believe there's all the ferrous dragons, right? Steel, mithril, adamantine, iron, steel, iron, adamantine, mithril. There's another one that I can't remember. But anyway, there's all those style dragons as well. There were the lung dragons, which were sort of the Chinese style dragons as well. I don't believe those are going to appear, but they might. That's an option as well. And then there were other epic style dragons like the Prismatic Dragon that we referenced earlier on, as well as a Force Dragon. And then my personal favorite, the Song Dragons. There's a bunch of different options out there. We can keep scrolling through here and see. We had a Ghost Dragon in here. Kind of similar. We got something in Candlekeep Mysteries like that. And here's some Draken Bone Golems. Horde Scarabs might make an appearance. That's a simple little creature you could add in. Basically like a beast that lives inside a dragon. There's all these planar dragons as well, which are dragons for the various different planes of existence. Now, I don't think these are going to appear because there's so many of them. But if plane hopping is going to be something we're going to do in the future, maybe, right? Battle dragons, chaos dragons, ethereal, Oceanus, and so on. Shadow dragons people wanted more of because it's just a template in the monster manual. I think we might see skeletal dragons. I think we might see vampiric dragons, and we might see zombie dragons. Those would be three that I would like to see. And then if we jump up ahead to the index of dragons here, you can see all of the different kinds. So all of the lung dragons are the ones I was telling you about that were the kind of the Chinese style dragons. But here's the brown dragon referenced here in Monsters of Faerun, as along with the song dragon. We have the shadow dragon we just talked about, right? Here's all these different kinds. So if I was going to say, yeah, what I would speculate is we're going to get a couple different types of dragons. Maybe not all of the ones that everybody wants, but I do think we're going to get these fairy-style dragons from the Feywild. I'm hoping for maybe Fang dragons because it would be interesting to have a dragon without a breath weapon. There's a possibility of the Brain Stealer dragon. Then we talked about the Elder Brain dragon, which is where an Elder Brain is supplanted onto the back of a dragon. A Brain Stealer dragon is where a dragon undergoes ceramorphosis, the process of becoming a Mind Flayer. So where you basically take a Mind Flayer tadpole and either implant it into the egg or into a wormling dragon, and it basically, it's after so many days, its body fundamentally shifts, and it becomes this sort of terrifying Brain Stealer Mind Flayer dragon, which would also be very cool. If you're going to go to the level of putting an Elder Brain Dragon in here, I feel like Brain Stealer Dragon's kind of a no-brainer, no pun intended. But yeah, I don't know. I think magic items, you got to knock it out of the park. I'd love to be surprised and see new feats and new spells outside of what was contained in the Unearthed Arcana, but I don't believe that's going to be the case. So I am going to say, we're going to get, obviously we have the Gem Dragons. We might get a stat block or a further mention of, I think it's Sardior. We have Bahamut is the god of the Metallic Dragons. Tiamat's the god of the Chromatic Dragons, and I think it's pronounced Sardior or something like that, is the Ruby Dragon, who's the god of the Gem Dragons. So we'll probably get a reference to them. And if we do get aspects of the dragon gods of Bahamut and Tiamat, it would only make sense to get an aspect of the Ruby Dragon as well. Mercury. Mercury was the other metallic dragon that I forgot. It was iron, steel, adamantine, mithril, mercury. So that's 5 dragon types right there you could add in for the Ferris style dragons. Maybe we'll get one of those, whatever the DM or the Wizards of the Coast folks feel is the most interesting. But again, I think you toe the line there, right? If you start referencing Ferris style, those kinds of dragons, and you include one, you're going to piss people off if you don't include all 5. So I think Fang Dragon is a safe bet because it's a little bit out of the area there. You could do Deep Dragons. I think the concept of a template for Skeletal, for Vampiric, and for Zombie Dragons would be an interesting thing to add into the game. So we already have Dracoliches and Shadow Dragons in the Monster Manual. Maybe some expanded options for half Draconic creatures or a Draconic template. So we have half dragons in the Monster Manual as a very small section, but like what if we wanted to do a Draconic Spider or a Draconic Giant or something like that? Those are things that have existed in the past. Maybe we'll get some rules on that. That would be cool. I can't really think of too much else off the top of my head. I'd love to see the Dragon Pantheon, like I mentioned earlier, with showing the other dragons like Cronepsis, the dragon god of death, and things like that to show that. And if we go with aspects of the dragons, maybe we could go with an aspect of all of the dragon gods, just to further educate folks who are new to Dungeons and Dragons about that kind of stuff. But yeah, you gotta bring it home with the magic items, Wizards. You gotta give us something good. People are gonna still be out there harvesting their dragons, looking for scales, looking for teeth, bones, whatever. We need something to do with those, whether it is in the form of grafting, like I said, or magical scales, or unique magic items. But people are gonna keep doing that, and it's something I feel like you have to recognize is constantly done. So we need some mechanic to handle that. That's the biggest thing to take away from this, in my mind. The other thing is if this book does well, which I think it will, it opens up the door for other creature-based books in the future. This is Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, a book about dragons. We could have, Vecna's Tome of Undead or something in the future and get an undead source book, or, Dewey Blex's Goober Guide. I don't know, a book about oozes. You know what I mean? Something like that. So if this does well, it could be the fundamental stepping stone for more source books related to the specific creatures. The only problem is monstrosities is a creature type, and that is so broad, I don't know how you could do a book about monstrosities. But other people have said if we're going to do a book about dragons, they should also do a book about dungeons. I don't disagree with that. Some sort of dungeoneering guide would be something interesting as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What are you most excited for in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons? What do you hope we get to see in it? And what do you think is going to show up in it? Because I know that's very different. It sounds kind of the same, but what you think is actually going to be in the book versus what you want is not always necessarily the same thing. Also, once again, hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you love Nerd Immersion or you love seeing up-to-date news coverage, top 10 videos, tinfoil hat speculation videos, that kind of stuff, D&D stories, whatever. I do all of it, folks. I would love if you subscribe to the channel. I would love to hit 100,000 subscribers by Gen Con so we can throw a big party and have fun. But only you have the power to make that happen. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.